I've got a new project amp to work on, and it's not entirely what it appears to be. From the front, it looks pretty much like a 70s Fender Deluxe Reverb with the silver faceplate. But from the back, it's a different story. Back here, it has the characteristics of a mid-60s Fender amp. Starting with this Fender electric instrument here, this is something you'd see on 60s Fender amps. If it was a later 70s amp, like the silver control plate on the front implies, then it would say CBS Musical Instruments here. It has a 2-prong accessory outlet, unlike the 3-prong ones you'd see on later amps. It does still have the tube chart in the cabinet, and although part of it's missing, there's enough to see that the circuit number is AA763, as opposed to AB763 that you'd see on later Deluxes. The choke has a date code that, as far as I know, indicates 1964. It's 606-4-09, and then the 125 number above it. The reverb transformer also has a 1964 code, although it's hard to read here. But the power transformer has a date code that looks like it would indicate 1972. So this is probably not an original transformer. The code is 606-2-09. And then it doesn't have the 125 number above it. It's a different sequence of numbers. So I'm pretty sure this can't be a 1962 transformer. I'm not sure if it could be an 82, but I'm going to go with 72, at least for now. And the output transformer is obviously not original. It's a lot larger than the original output transformer that would have been in here, and it's in the wrong spot. So that's obviously been replaced, probably because somebody put 6L6 power tubes in this, as opposed to the 6V6 that it would have originally come with. So now let's take a look inside to see what other clues we can find. It's obvious somebody's been in here before, and they went a little crazy with the silicone. It's got some of the original blue molded capacitors, which would be normal for a 1960s Fender amp, although some of them have been replaced. And it looks like the rectifier tube socket has been replaced. The date codes that I could make out on the pots were either 1963 or 64. This is the original volume pot from the vibrato channel, and this was replaced at some point and was included with the amp in a bag of parts. And this has a 1963 date code on it. And how does it sound? Not that great. It seems a lot quieter and cleaner than it should be. Here it is on 10. And it's hard to tell on camera, but this wasn't very loud at all. And it was very clean and really thin sounding. You'd think with the larger output transformer and the 6L6 tubes, it would have been louder and just overall fuller sounding. But in this case, it seemed quieter than any other deluxe reverb that I had ever played. So what do we have here? As far as I can tell, it's a 1964 deluxe reverb that has a silver faceplate from probably a 1970s deluxe reverb, and then a power transformer from 1972, maybe from the same amp that the faceplate came off of. And I do know that there were silver face deluxe reverbs in the late 60s, but I'm pretty sure those would have had the word amp underneath deluxe reverb on the faceplate. And I think that was removed somewhere around 70. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm going on for now. And obviously the output transformer has been changed and the power tubes. But it appears that the cabinet is original, I also found this stamp in the bottom of the cabinet, and it looks like it says AC1264. So I don't know for sure, but that could be another indication of a 1964 production date. Maybe December 64. I don't know. So my plan was to return it to the original circuit as closely as I could. First thing I did was to remove the output transformer and replace it with a new Hammond transformer in the style of the original, and then put 6v6 power tubes back in. Replacing the transformer was actually pretty straightforward. There's just a few wires you have to undo and then redo, and I put it in the original spot that the transformer would have been in. The holes were still there. And I won't get into great detail about how I wired it because I'm not a pro at this stuff, and this video isn't meant to give in-depth technical information on how to work on amps because I'm an amateur and I'm learning as I go. Once I had the new transformer in, it sounded pretty much the same as it did before. It was still quieter than it should be and cleaner than it should be. And it took me a while, but I finally figured out what the problem was, and it was this one chassis ground here. That wire had come loose. In this shot, I've already fixed it and resoldered it, but that had come loose, and once I reattached that missing 30% of the output came back, and it sounded like what a deluxe reverb should sound like. And at that point, for a moment, I thought, well, maybe I should try putting the old output transformer back in and the 6L6s. If it wasn't running at full power before, maybe I'd like it now with the other transformer. But I decided not to because, for one thing, that transformer is really heavy and adds a lot of weight to the amp, which I don't want. And also, when I play out, it's generally in small places where I can't turn the amp up very much. So the last thing I want is something that's going to make the amp louder. So I decided just to keep the 6v6s in and the smaller output transformer. And then I did some work to the reverb tank. So the amp came with this Accutronics reverb tank installed. It's not original, but I was also given the original tank when I got the amp, which I'm assuming was removed because it didn't work. But I want to see if I can get it to work. Here's the original tank. You can see it says 64 here. I'm assuming that's 1964. So I wanted to see if I could repair this. And I don't know a ton about these, but I have replaced one in the past. And I know it has these really fine wires here that sometimes break. So the first thing I did was to check the continuity from here to here, and that one was good, and that one was good. But then when I did the other side, the black wire was good, but the green wire had no continuity. So I assumed it was broken. And you can see here already what I did, but so assuming that green wire was broken somewhere between here and here, I just soldered in this jumper wire basically, and going in parallel with the green wire. And I just did that because I didn't want to mess with these really fine wires. I didn't want to try to desolder things over here, so I just put that in. I don't know if that's the correct way to do it. It may not be, but it now reads good. So the amp has some newer RCA cables going to and from the reverb tank, but it came with the original RCA cables, and it looks like the only issue is that the braid over here is disconnected from this part. So I'm going to see if I can repair that so I can reuse these. I'm not assuming they're going to sound any better, just just for fun, keep it as original as I can. First thing I'm going to try to do is to just clean some of the old braid off of there. And there's a lot of it. I think that's all of it. And now I'll try to get the tip off. There it goes. I think I just need to trim the length a little bit. Never worked with this kind of cable before, so learning as I go. Trying to unbraid the braid a little bit. Okay, seems tight. Now I'm going to solder the braid to the tip. I'm going to plug it in and see if it works. Works. And here's how it's sounding now with the transformer replaced and the new 6v6 tubes. And it sounds pretty good. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I might see if I can find a black faceplate for it, like it would have originally had. I might try to do some simple mods to it, since it's already been modded. But somebody's already been in there moving things around, so we'll see. I'm not sure yet. So stay tuned for the next installment. Thanks for watching.